1078 officer in need.
What's up, guys? It's Matt from the 1078 Project. Hey, if you're new to the organization, a little bit about us. The 1078 Project is a non-profit organization that's been founded and developed by law enforcement officers who have been involved in critical incidents and officer-involved shootings. Our goal at the 1078 Project is to provide mental, spiritual, and practical support to law enforcement officers as they navigate the difficult times surrounding an officer-involved shooting. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode, and I'll see you on the other side, boys. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1078 Project podcast. Today's guest is a field training officer. He's a canine handler. He is a TFO, the Homeland Security, an active shooter instructor, and has been a cop for an extremely long period of time. He's got a bunch of critical incidents underneath his belt. This is a must-listen to episode. I think maybe 4 officer-involved shootings. Today's guest is Pat Dolan. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the 1078 Project. Today we're sitting down with Pat. What's up, dude?
Not too much. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm excited to have you in. You have a pretty wild law enforcement life. I'm excited to dive in and for people to hear your story.
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of years.
A couple? Yeah, a couple years. Yeah, for sure. Before we dive into all your critical incidents, because I can think of 5 off the top of my head, let's get to know you a little bit. Did you grow up in St. Louis?
Yeah, born and raised North County, like most of St. Charles County is now.
Yeah.
Parents were both from North County. My dad grew up in the city and then in Jennings and Pine Lawn. And then we lived up in unincorporated Florissant, St. Louis County area. And then grew up early years there, Catholic grade school.
Like
just
everybody else,
CYC,
dude.
It's carbon copy.
Which one did you go to?
St. Angela Marisi.
Okay.
So
Went to Good Shepherd.
Yeah. I think we beat you a lot.
I don't know. How old are you?
You're younger than me.
Yeah, you're a little bit older than me.
I'm 41.
Yeah. I was just a twinkle in my daddy's eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so went there, and then we moved out to St. Charles County, and I couldn't get into the Catholic grade school out here right away because it was exploding, so I was on a waiting list.
St. Dominic?
No, this would have been middle school.
Oh, okay.
Right, like 7th and 8th grade. Couldn't get in like 7th grade, so I had to wait, and then I switched in 8th grade, which was terrible, to Catholic middle school where I knew nobody.
Yeah.
And then I went to Duchesne High School.
Okay. You said CYC. What sports did you play? Soccer? I know that for sure.
Soccer and volleyball.
Okay.
Played a lot of volleyball.
That's paid off now, right?
Volleyball?
Yeah, all the volleyball tournaments and all the...
I mean, I still play currently.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's
I love it.
Everybody plays.
Yeah, we started that in 2nd grade. I mean, we played every sport. I mean, it was whatever sport season we were in, we played. But I played club soccer and then played volleyball and club volleyball. And
what club did you play for soccer?
Cougars. And then, that was the thing in Florissant when I was there. And we took basically our CYC team from the church and just all played club ball.
Yeah.
So we were competitive, but we didn't have the money like the Scott Gallaghers and the...
That's what I played for.
Glavins. And
I played for Scott Gallagher, but I didn't have money either. They sponsored me to play.
Well, my dad coached too, so that
okay,
helped.
cool. Yeah.
But yeah, so then came out west and went to Duchesne, played volleyball and soccer there. And then had a few things happen in my personal life early on in high school. My parents were married for 25 years, and then they got divorced my freshman year.
Really?
Which was weird. And so I have a half-brother and a sister from my mom's previous marriage, and I didn't know any different as a little kid. They were just my brother and sister.
Yeah.
And it's still that way. And then
did you not get to see them after that point for a while?
No. So my brother's, my sister's the oldest. My brother's 10 years older than me, so there's a pretty good gap. My brother graduated from Hazelwood Central and went right into the military. He went into the Army, and then my sister took a different path and worked odd jobs and was a bartender and did all the things. She's still local. My brother lives out in Seattle. He's been there since he got out of the Army.
Oof. Yeah. Seattle.
Yeah, it's not his favorite place, but that's where his wife's from, and he's got 4 kids, and
they're stuck there.
He's got roots, so he stays there. So
what'd your dad do for a living?
My dad was a mailman for
Really?
30-ish years.
Dude, that's like I don't know how it is now, but that used to be like the best profession ever.
It was.
You get like super great benefits. You get federal benefits.
Yes.
And like
it was.
Yeah.
It was great. He hustled. My dad has an incredible work ethic. He worked 6 days a week. So
really,
yeah, his day off would rotate, but then he was on the overtime list till he retired. So and he walked. He didn't ride. He drove to his route, but then he walked.
That's
and
awesome.
He worked in Hazelwood, Maryland Heights. So
that's not like door to door either. You get some good steps in.
I mean, he started at Hazelwood, and then later on he transferred out to. They can combine some post offices, and then he went out to Maryland Heights. But yeah, I mean, his route was walking. He walked every day, 8, 10, 12 hours a day.
Was mom stay at home, or did she work?
No, my mom was in the medical industry. She was a nurse by trade, and then she worked she ran a couple of, she ran an OBGYN's office, and then she was down at WashU, and she ran their orthopedic surgery department.
Holy cow.
And then she did pharmaceutical sales at one point. I mean, she's been all over the place in the medical world. Pretty impressive resume from that side. But,
yeah. Were you and your dad really close?
Yeah, me and my dad are still very.
You said
close.
he coached soccer. Was that a thing through your whole childhood?
Yeah, my dad was my guy. Like, he was always there. He's always still there. Yeah,
so
always.
Cool.
Yep.
It's become a thing, like a trend for me to ask this, but like, what are the characteristics about your dad that you like looked up to when he was growing up? And I think this is like just a way for me as a dad to like maybe grab onto a couple things so I can give back to my kids. So what are the things like growing up, like talking to your dad or things about your dad? What characteristics were you like, man, I really appreciate this?
He was a constant for sure. He came from 6 siblings. He was one of 6. And I think where he lacked from his dad, who was still a great man, but he didn't get the attention. I was my dad's only child, biological child.
Yeah.
So he really wanted to make sure he did right by me. So he was always available. And he was gone early in the morning and worked till late afternoon, early evening, but he was always home.
Like the times that he was home?
Yep. And then he played soccer on the weekends, so I was in the back of the car on the way to the soccer games, and I'd run around at the beginning of the game, and then halftime and the end of the game, I was kicking the ball and running around with all the guys he played with. And so I was pretty much a shadow.
Yeah.
He was firm. He had expectations, but he was fair too.
Yeah.
So I never wanted for anything, for sure, from either of my parents as far as that was. They're pretty, I mean, they come from the era where save everything, and my dad's pretty intelligent with a buck. Yeah. But you can't leave with all of the money you save.
Yeah.
So, I now he's 74, and I tell him, spend your money. You've saved it your whole life. Spend it. Buy some stuff you want.
Yeah.
And the running joke was always, well, I'm going to spend my last dime as I'm dying. Yeah. I'd tell him I'm going to have all this inheritance, and he'd tell me he's going to spend those last dime as he's dying. And I said, it's great. I know you're a cheap ass, and I'm going to have really nice paid off shit. Yeah. And it took him. He wanted to buy a Harley for like 25 years. I said, well, you just buy the bike. You quit messing around, just buy it. And he finally did.
At 70-something?
No, this was probably 10 years ago he bought it.
Okay. Still at 60-something, yeah.
Just buy it. You got the money. Go buy it. Have a little fun.
Yeah. Can't die with it, dude. Money's just a thing.
Yeah. So he retired from the post office. He didn't work for a couple of years. He played a lot of golf and then went back to work. And he works for a golf course. And he plays golf for free. So him and some of his retired buddies work at different golf courses. So they play like their own senior circuit around St. Charles County, where they all get to play for free and bring their friends one day a week. So they just bounce around to different courses.
Sounds like a good gig.
Yeah, it's not terrible. So, there's times where I get thrown into that and I get to come out and play with the old guys. So it's fun.
What was it like having your parents? Because like your freshman year is like a super I feel like that's like between 8th grade and your senior year, like super important
Yeah,
years.
it was rough. I didn't see it coming, obviously. You know, we try to protect our kids from things. I like to argue in front of your kids or fight or whatever, but I didn't see it coming, nor was I looking for it. But you know, when my mom and dad divorced, they tried to do some counseling. I don't know how much they really did. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And then mom she had an apartment out in O'Fallon, actually, for a short time, and then she moved to Seattle.
Really?
Yeah. So, and there's some animosity from that. I never got a choice of what I wanted to do, if I wanted to stay or I wanted to go.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would have chosen given the option at the time, but I stayed with Dad, and he did everything. I mean, he went into overdrive as far as working to make sure that my life didn't change any more than it already had. Like, he didn't want to lose the house. He didn't want to give the house up. He didn't want to have to change anything for me, other than the fact that it was just me and him at that point.
From that point on, how often did you see your mom?
You know, it was a couple times a year. Her mom still lived, when she was alive, still lived here, and she lived in Florissant still. So she would come back a few times a year, or I would go out there periodically. But it was rocky. It wasn't fun. And then, you know, young man thinks he knows what he's doing, and I thought I had all the answers to the world. And I butted heads with my dad, and I figured out how tough my dad was when he cleaned my clock. And I said, I don't, this is not working. And then my senior year, it was right at the start of my senior year, a good friend of mine was killed in a motorcycle accident.
Oh, no.
And so that kind of sent me into a little bit of a tailspin. He was older, he was out of school, but same, like, that group was always together, like every weekend. Everybody hung out at my house. The guys on the motorcycles or the old hot rods or race cars or whatever, they always come over to the house and just hang out. It was just, nobody really drank. You know, the guy smoked cigarettes or whatever at the time, but, like, we weren't doing anything wrong. We were just sitting around hanging out at the house. It was, my dad would rather have us there than out running around getting into
trouble.
And I mean, we had our fair share of run-ins with St. Peter's because that's where we lived. But it was a dad created an environment that was, everybody wanted to be there.
Yeah. And
it made him feel better knowing that I was at home, not running the street. Nothing good happens after midnight.
Yeah.
So, and then when I did have a curfew, it was, I want you home. And then he wouldn't be home. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to have parties at the house. If you're not going to be here, we're going to make the most of this. And then as I got older, he hung out with everybody. Like, he was there. His only rule was no drugs and don't drink my beer. And we caught a couple people drinking his beer, and that was the last time they were at our house. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, he was good. He's still my biggest fan.
I'm sure that lack of mom there and that and dad being there probably made you guys super, super close.
Yeah, and that's also resulted in some animosity from my mom's side. You favor your dad. I sure do.
Yeah.
But after we had...
It's kind of hard not to.
Yeah. After I had... My buddy was killed in a motorcycle accident, and then I had a few run-ins with my dad. School was just a disaster.
Yeah.
So the choice was made collectively at the time that I went out to live with my mom, and I finished high school out in Seattle. I went to this... My mom lived just outside of Tacoma, Washington, and I went to this alternative high school where it was you work at your own pace. So I just blew through my senior year work, and I was done. I would have graduated in the spring, but I graduated in like the first week of December, and then I just worked.
Really?
Yeah. I was there about 10 months. And and my mom had started seeing somebody else, and like she was doing her thing, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know anybody. I don't have a support group. Mom's doing her life. I'm 18. I'm going to go back where I'm comfortable. So then I came back. And things were much better with my dad at that point. We kind of squashed everything and got along great. So he still tried to guide me to make good decisions and do what parents are supposed to do. But I still made some pretty stupid decisions.
We all do.
as a young adult, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it was, I didn't have a hard childhood growing up. I mean, I got to do all the things.
Going through high school, what were your aspirations after high school? What did you want to do?
So at the time I was big into the automotive stuff. I was big into cars. I thought that's the direction I was going to go. I worked at a dealership in Tacoma when I lived there, and came home, and I'd always been, like, even in high school, I'd worked in changing oil, or worked at what used to be Bob Schultz, but it's Big St. Charles now. I worked over there with the motorcycle stuff, and all the guys I ran around with, that's what they did.
Yeah.
So that was the direction I thought I was going to go. But while I was in high school, there's a bar that most old people will know. I don't know if you're old enough to remember it, but In Cahoots.
Oh, I've heard of it, yeah.
Used to be down in our city. Now it's church.
Yeah.
And
In Cahoots, that's hilarious.
I was 16, and I was working security, door staff at a nightclub-ish.
Yeah.
It was country western, but they had like any coin beer night. Like, you just throw a coin on the bar and you get a bottle of beer. And then they had teen night on Sunday night, which was a disaster.
Yeah.
But it's an old Sam's Club, so it's huge. And here I am, this 16, 17-year-old kid running around in a bar. And then, I took a break from it when I left and went to Seattle, and then I came back and started working there again. And I worked there off and on for a couple of years until it changed names, and I was one of the only ones that stayed on with one of the other guys. And it changed over to Cody's, which was like a chain of bars around the country, and then people were stealing money and management. It was a disaster.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was bad. But I made great money working security, and I worked with a bunch of cops. So I was standing around listening to all the cop stories, and I was like, oh, this doesn't sound bad. Like, you guys make pretty good money standing here doing nothing. And your regular day job's not all that bad either.
Yeah.
So I kind of had an interest in it a little bit. One of my dad's good friends growing up, when I was growing up, he was around quite a bit. He was an old city cop, and he would bring, I didn't know it was a real thing, a murder book, and he would have them. He'd be like, look at this one we worked, and it was all the crime scene photos and all the
Really?
yeah. So he was in drugs, and he was in their intel unit for a while, and he did all the things that everybody gets into police work to do. Like, he lived it. And I was like, wow, this is probably should be looking at this book, but this is pretty interesting stuff. But I did that, and got that experience from him, and then all the guys I worked with at the bar. And then I worked down on the landing when the landing was still around before the casino was built. And I worked in a nightclub down there on Fridays and Saturdays, and we got paid to fight. Like, that's what we did. That's all we did. I never thought I'd wear a bulletproof vest in a bar, but we did.
Yeah, we just stopped some dude that was working in one of those bars the other night, and he had a bulletproof vest in the trunk of his car. Yeah,
we all wore them. It was rough, and it was one of the rougher bars on the northern end of the landing, on the strip down there. But that's kind of where it all started. And then I worked in the automotive industry for a while, and then I applied. I got fed up with it, and I could read the writing on the wall. The economy was starting to tank. And like the automotive industry was starting to take a turn in like 04, 05-ish. So I put in, because I didn't have the academy, I put in at O'Fallon for CO spot.
Oh, yeah, dude, I forgot you started there.
Yeah. So me and Fagans worked midnights together in the jail. It was a blast. He's the funniest man alive. It's weird.
He's so easy to talk to.
Yeah.
When he came in here, he was just like, I don't think I said anything. He just, he talked the whole time.
He's really funny, and the way he interacts with people is pretty impressive. So, I mean, that's where I got in the jail there. I worked under DM, and he was my night sergeant. And then I take that back. He was the night lieutenant. And then that's where I developed a relationship with him, and I still talk to him pretty regularly.
Yeah, he's the man.
But, like, a lot of the guys that were working for him were guys that I still communicate with that work at O'Fallon. And then I had met my ex-wife at the time, or now, and she didn't like shift work, and we found out we were having a baby, so she's like, I don't really think this is going to work with your shift work, so I got out, went back into automotive, and then I did the whole stay at home, make sure I was available, no nights, no weekends, and then that didn't work out between her and I. I mean, I got my daughter out of it, and she's incredible. I wouldn't trade her for the world.
First, you're gone too much, then you're there too much.
I don't know that it was that. I think it was just it wasn't meant to be, for sure. Yeah. It was young life decisions, and it just.
How old were you when you started as a CO?
Man, I think I was 28 when I went in the academy. So I was a little bit older when I went in. So it would have been, I was probably 23 or 24, because I did 5 years of corrections before I went into the academy. So
all 5 of those were at O'Fallon?
No. So the first year was, then I got out, and then I got back in. I went up to Lincoln County just to get my foot back in the door.
Yeah.
And then I got hired on by Florissant as a CO, and worked there for a couple years.
Did you enjoy it, working in the jail? Because I hated it.
Depends on where you're at. Florissant was busy. I learned a tremendous amount of interaction with people, how to talk to them.
Yeah.
It was the best way to develop a skill of talking with people that don't want to be there. And convincing them that, hey, like, I didn't bring you here. I didn't put you here, but we're here. And you can either get along with me or not. It's your choice. We can make the most of it or not.
Yeah, communicating with angry people, definitely. I got a lot of that. I was 21, so I needed some time in the oven still, you know?
Yeah, it probably doesn't help. I mean, being super young and being a cop, you don't really have enough life experience. So I think for me, and my advantage was I was 28 when I went in the academy. I was a little bit older, but I had that 5 years of off and on in the jail where, you know, at Lincoln County, it was state charges. It was long-term holding. There was federal inmates there.
Yeah, they had a Fed contract there for a while.
I think they still do. I don't know if they still have it, but they did. They've had it a couple different times and got it and lost it and got it back or whatever. But they held ICE inmates. They held for the marshals.
Yeah, that's what they were doing. When I dealt with them, they were holding for the marshals.
Yeah. So, you know, you're dealing with people that are sitting on homicide charges or assault first charges or, you know, whatever, that have committed real crimes.
Yeah.
And you have to deal with them, and you have to figure out a way to talk to them. You can't just fight everybody. You can't go down that path. That doesn't work. Somebody eventually is going to kick the shit out of you, and it's not going to work for you. So it developed my ability to de-escalate. And that's where I think, like, all these guys going through the academy now, they've all got jobs already.
And they're young, dude.
Yeah.
A lot of young dudes going through the academy.
Yeah, for sure. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think the hurdle they have is when they hit the street. Some of them never been married. They still live with their parents. And they're going to go to a domestic call or a child custody call. And I'm sorry, but if you come to my house and you're living in your parents' basement and you're a brand new cop and you're going to tell me how to handle my child custody, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah.
You got to learn, but that's on them to learn and figure out how to handle those calls.
Yeah, probably good if they. I talked to Travis. I don't know how to say his last name all that well, Gribel, about this, and he talks about. I think you actually say Gribble, but he talked about how he thinks that they should raise the age for police officers from 21 to like 25, so that way you do have a little bit of seasoning before you step into it. Because I remember as a 21-year-old cop, it was hard, man. It was like I spent some time in the jail. I spent like 8 months in the jail, so it was an eye-opening experience for me. And you do learn how to talk to people that are upset and find a way to find common ground with people that you really don't have very much common ground with, which was super beneficial. But still, at that point, I think when I got out on the road, I was maybe 22 years old. I did have a house, but I wasn't married, and I didn't have kids. I was just living my best life, Right. So I didn't really understand like the common man's problem all that much.
Sure.
So
and how do you go and mitigate a husband and wife fighting over something in a divorce when you know nothing about that realm of life?
Yeah.
What do you tell somebody that wants their kids and it's their weekend to have them, and the wife says no, or vice versa? You're not taking those children out of one parent's hands and putting them in the other.
Yeah.
So if you don't know that and you think they're violating a court order, you got to figure it out real quick, or you're going to get yourself in a trick bag. So I could see the argument both ways for raising the age for law enforcement.
The problem is recruiting's so tough right now. I think they're taking whoever they got, dude. Honestly.
I think their current class that just started at Eastern, I think has 20. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's got like 18.
That's a lot for
what it's been.
Yeah. I think it's the last one before that, I think it was like 12.
Yeah.
It's been pretty small.
Better. And kudos to the people that are going in right now.
Yeah. I got into law enforcement when people liked the cops. I got in 2012. Went through the academy in 2011. People liked the cops then, man.
Yeah, you must have been my junior class.
I probably was. I was like 411 was our class number.
Oh, you went part-time too, didn't you?
No, I went full-time.
So I went in May, and I was full-time. May of 11.
Okay.
So we graduated in November of 12.
I can't remember.
So I think we were 2.
You were one behind me, I think.
We were 2-211 or whatever, however they.
Maybe you were before me. I don't know. I can't remember.
But that's when I went through, and there was 21 or 22 of us then. We lost one, and he made it through protocol, and then he watched a couple of. I think he watched the Dinkheller video of that old sheriff's deputy that gets shot by the old Vietnam vet.
Oh, that is a hard one to watch, dude.
Yeah,
not because. It's a hard one to watch because you're like, do something.
Wow.
Anything other than what you're doing, please do.
Yeah, the kid in our class walked out after that.
Really?
Yeah, he couldn't handle it after that. That was the reality check that he had. And
good for him, man. I'm happy he walked away then instead of 5 years into his career when somebody's trying to shoot you.
Or fake it for 6 months to get through the academy and then freeze on the street.
Yeah.
The Dinkheller thing, there's a documentary on it. And the reason he didn't do anything was he'd been reprimanded like the week before for pulling his gun on a traffic stop. So he's afraid of getting reprimanded again. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So there was.
Imagine being the dude that wrote that reprimand. Living with that, dude. My God.
So
that had to be hard.
Yeah. But yeah, the jail was a tremendous thing for me. Because I don't come from a family of law enforcement.
Me either.
My dad's dad was he was in the Navy. He worked in Postal Service as well. Mm-hmm. And then my dad did the same thing, and then my brother was in the Army, but he was an officer, and he hated the Army. He used it for his degree and GI Bill, and
Yeah.
used the federal government to his advantage. So,
Yeah.
But he's like, I wouldn't recommend going to the Army. Like, it's just not what you think it's going to be.
And he was like 10 or 11 years older than you?
He's 10 years older than me. Yeah. So, but he and I are pretty close, actually. Even though he's been gone since he graduated high school. He's been gone and hasn't lived here since.
So the draw to law enforcement was the security stuff, all those guys talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys that I ran with down there working in the bars and down in Cahoots, it was all cops working secondary, with the exception of a couple of us that were employed by the bar itself. And they had a good time. Like, they just it's never been about, oh, look at the uniform. I don't care about that. Like, and people don't care what we look like as long as we're there to do our job. They don't care what we're wearing. But yeah, they're just good people and told you what they thought. And hey, it's good. It's consistent work. It's dangerous at times, but we have a good time. And they did. So, and I think I got that from my dad, where it's, he worked for the federal government. I'm not a sales guy. I don't like the inconsistency or is my next check. I have to sell this. I don't like that pressure. I can handle the pressure of this job, but at least I know I'm going to have a paycheck to put food on the table for my kiddo. And, that was the big thing, is the consistency. And then law is interesting to me. So, I had no interest in being an attorney, but legal side of things is interesting.
I had plenty of interest in being an attorney. I'm just too stupid to be one.
Not for me. Not for me. I mean,
sorry to interrupt the episode, but we got some big, exciting things happening with 1078. As you guys know, we sell merch, and that's been going pretty well. We decided to drop 2 more T-shirts, one of which I think you guys will think is hilarious. Head over to the website, www.1078project.com. Click the merch button. It will take you to our merch store, where you can purchase a shirt. Just so you guys know, all the proceeds from those shirts, all the profits from those shirts are getting donated back to the nonprofit, and it's a way for us to continue to do the work that we have been doing. Also, we have big news as well. We're having a trivia night. It's on 9/20. If you're looking to attend the trivia night, again, go to the website, www.1078project.com. Go to the events tab, and you can register. All the information that you'll need is there. Guys, this is a really big deal to us. This is the way that we fund all of our operations. If you're a business, you're looking to sponsor the trivia night, again, you can reach out to us, or you can go to the website, to the event tab. All of our contact information will be on there. Hit us up. We'd love to have your support. We've also loved to have you guys at the trivia night. I'll stop talking so we can get back to the episode.
Kudos to those that do it, but not my bag.
Yeah. So you moved from Lincoln County to Florissant?
Mm-hmm. And I was there. I actually took Mike Vernon's place when he got out of the academy and went to the road, and I was there in the jail. And that was a weird deal. Like, I worked for a couple years on straight midnights, from, I guess, 2008 till 2011 when I went in the academy. And then I got it approved, and then first day of the academy, my sergeant at the time came out and said, you need to make a decision. I was going to work and go to the academy full time. I got it all approved, and then the sergeant came out and said, they changed their mind. You need to make a decision, work or the academy. I said, well, I'm not going to be a jailer for the rest of my life. It's not going to work. I gotta make more money. I got priorities I got to deal with. And so I put my resignation in there and took the leap. And
so they made you resign instead of like sponsoring you or trying to get you to come back and work there.
That was the story. And then I found out later that that's not really what happened. There was just more of a personal vendetta.
Oh, okay.
Which that's fine. Like, most of those guys up there are great people. I learned a tremendous amount working up there. Florissant is busy. The guys I don't know about the guys up there now, but like the guys that were there when I was there were hard workers. They hustled. They wanted to go out and do police work and catch bad guys and do all of that. So yeah, I took the leap, and I had a house at the time in St. Peter's. I rented the house out, so I didn't have that hanging over my head because I didn't have an income at that point.
Where'd you go? Where'd you stay?
At that point, actually, my mom had moved back to Missouri, and she was living in St. Charles, and so I moved in with her while I was in the academy. And then my daughter and I moved in with her, and did the academy, graduated, and moved back into my house after the lease was up on the person that was renting it, which worked out perfect. Saved me from having to pay a mortgage. I didn't have to give up the house. And so it was a little weird for my daughter because she was little. She was born in 2007. So she's like, why are we moving out of our house? And why are we moving back into it now?
Yeah.
But now she understands why we did what we did. But
what did you think about the academy?
So when I was there, the guy that technically ran it was basic training coordinator, was the guy that used to work at O'Fallon, Fred.
So, I think he was deployed while I was there.
He was. He went, and then a retired captain from St. Peter's was running it.
An old guy?
Rubling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was the basic training coordinator.
That's who I had too.
Yeah, really nice guy. I don't think he really cared.
No, he was just kind of there, man.
Show up, don't screw up, don't make me look bad.
Yeah.
And we'll get through it.
He was like deaf. Like you had to like yell at him.
Yeah, I don't know if that was just because he was
like,
old.
What?
If that was because he was old or
because he really didn't
he
care.
Was deaf. I don't know. But that's when Neubauer was running it, and he was the old police chief from St. Peter's, if I remember correctly. And then Gary Rubling was his captain. He was there. Rubling was great. Like I got along with him. I never had issues with him, but I didn't. I was older. Like I understood the game a little bit, and just show up and keep your head down. And don't draw attention to yourself. Yeah. Other people weren't that smart. But it wasn't bad. We did our thing,
Did you feel like it prepared you?
I felt like I was more prepared going in because of the correction side. Like I had a better understanding of what the Blue Book has in it, our Bible, how we function with that. Whereas a lot of guys, that was a foreign language to them. So I think in a lot of ways I was able to excel because I already knew a lot of it. Because dealing with some of the crimes that we had in Florissant, I was seeing a lot of the stuff already. And a lot of these guys had no law enforcement background at all. So it prepared you in some ways, but not overall. Yeah. And I think this job is very much on-the-job training.
Yeah, I don't think you can be all that prepared. I think it can teach you the basic techniques, and sometimes I think that maybe they should teach the techniques that you're actually going to use.
Yeah.
Rather than some, that's kind of moved to the wayside with JJLE, like Jiu-Jitsu for law enforcement has been. That's like where everyone's moving now, which I think is more beneficial than like the old PPCT type way. Because I've been a cop 12 years and I've never seen a single person get handcuffed to the PPCT way, but we spent hours drilling it. It's like things like that where you're just like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, I mean, even the county-wide task force. I mean, there's a class that's put on that 2 county guys put together, and then I help instruct it, but we go through a whole different way of doing like felony stops, and it's much more efficient. It's safer for everyone. Instead of, put your hands behind your back, face the palms upward, bend over at the waist. Like nobody handcuffs anybody like that.
Nobody does that.
It never, and anybody that's going to run from you is never going to comply that way. Like you just.
Yeah, and even the felony stop thing, man. Like there's a way to do a felony stop for sure, but I've also watched hundreds of cops
Run up on the
just
car.
run up on a car.
Well,
dude.
that's what we're trying to get away from.
You chase it for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It stops, and then everybody runs directly to the bad guy. It's like,
Correct.
what are we doing here?
Well, and that's what we're trying to get away from.
Yeah.
That's where that class is huge. And even if it's not a task force operation, but it's a pursuit in the middle of a day on a Wednesday,
Yeah.
and it comes to an end in St. Charles, if they've been through that class, they know how to set this up for a felony stop.
Yeah.
So it's, I think, a look at it with some fresh eyes, and I know the boxes have to be checked for post and things like that. So I get they got to do what they got to do, but I think the real world side is where it's at. It's
Yeah.
the academy checks some boxes, but there's only so much you can teach them in that environment.
Yeah, it's just unrealistic. And the only way to make it real is for it to be real, you know. There's only so many ways you can simulate a guy being real mad, and that's to get in front of a guy who's real mad and will actually punch you in the face.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just like firearms training. You shoot static paper.
Mm-hmm.
When you up the stress level a little bit, then you kind of find out what you're made of.
They got away from that in our police department is no longer just shooting paper. It's a lot of moving, tourniquets.
We do more of that now, but like the way it always has been is you shoot
5 rounds from the 25.
Yeah. So there's no real stress other than the stress you put on yourself for qualification or whatever.
Yeah.
But if that target is moving or they're pointing a gun at you, that stress level
changes the dynamic just a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the academy's great. I think obviously that every state's got a little different take on it, and I'm sure there's better ways to do it in other states.
They've come far.
But
last time I was there,
it
seems like they're doing a much better job than they ever have.
Yeah, and I think the consistency. Like I was fortunate enough this class that just started. I was out there with Joe and Eric. They let me come out and tag along for the day and
for the protocol
day. And those guys, they do a great job. Like, I mean, it's paramilitary, but they're trying to really see if you can hack it.
They're just trying to break
you. Don't want to if you don't want to quit. If you really want to do this,
isn't it interesting that we only do that one time at the very beginning of our career?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But how do you implement that?
I don't know. Maybe some type of fitness program or something of those sorts.
I think you guys did that once before.
We did that, and the guy got paid.
Well. Yeah, I don't think it ended well.
Yeah, it didn't end well. We've tried to implement it a couple times after that, but
it
just hasn't.
I mean, there's
Montana is huge into that. Like he wants a fitness program at O'Fallon so bad.
There's policies that say you have to be able to effectively do your job, and I mean they're not exactly worded that way, but if you can't do your job, you're not fit for duty.
Well, it's just it goes back to the main concept of it is you can teach somebody how to use a taser, you can teach somebody how to use a gun, and we train all of these items, these things that are attached to us all the time, but we never really train the thing using those items.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to me, it's equally as important especially after going through shooting. Your body does weird stuff. You know what I mean? Like you're pushing your body to its limits.
Yeah.
And if you're not physically prepared for that, there's also some bad side effects that can come from that. So we probably should be doing something more than just nothing at all.
Well, I mean, you look at any of the special ops teams. I mean, the SWAT guys do PT regularly, and then they have to run their O course and qualify on their O course or whatever they call it, their annual certification on it. They've got to do that to be on the team and stay active. And if they can't, then I guess they have their procedures in place where they get pulled off or they're put on probation and they can't be active on the team until they pass that course.
Yeah.
Why can't that be the same for patrol? I mean,
because a lot of people would fail it.
Well, that's
probably the answer.
Yeah. But I need to know the guy standing next to me is competent and capable.
Yeah.
And that he's going to come through, and he's not.
Well, you work a dog, man. How many times I've been on so many tracks where I'm like, 2 o'clock in the morning. We've been running for a mile and a half. I look behind me, and I'm like,
You're on your own.
dude, there's nobody out here. Like, it's pitch black. I can't see 4 feet in front of my face. Like, all right, well, things just got real interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's I guess, I don't know, guys, and I'm not by any means one to point the finger at people that should be in the gym or being more active, but
I'm not saying you have to be like some muscle-bound bodybuilder.
but
I'm
you
just
gotta
saying
do
you need to
something.
be
Something.
capable. You just have to be capable. I don't care what you train, how you train, but you should have to train somewhat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, the prime example, great guy, very deceiving, was Mike Durkee.
Yeah, you
mean,
get that train moving, boy.
He's big guy, but he was good at what he did. If he got a hold of you.
Oh, dude, he was fast too.
But he wouldn't quit either.
He was fast. He was like, you got that train going on the tracks, man. He would get moving.
Yeah.
I had Charlie Neal on here the other day.
Yeah.
He's like, all you just have to do is just turn. He's like, because he ain't stopping.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to do he taught our ground fighting at O'Fallon when I was there. And I had to partner with him. And I go, what am I going to do with you? I can't fight you. Like,
Yeah.
You're 400 pounds.
Dude, he was huge.
I'm a third of you.
Yeah.
What am I?
That is a big boy.
I need a Mack truck for you. I don't have.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I have that I'm going to be able to physically overpower you. It's just not going to work.
He was so big, man. So you get you leave the academy. How long did it take you to get a job?
At that time, it took a little while. Jobs weren't handed out like they're handed out
Oh,
now. There was only a couple people that graduated in uniform.
It was so competitive. We had 2 people in our whole class that graduated in uniform.
Yeah, it was probably something like that. Maybe 3 or 4. I don't remember exactly. But so I actually went back to Lincoln County for a real short period of time just so I could have a paycheck for a little while. And then
In the jail? Or
yeah, they didn't have any spots on the road, and at the time it was like, if you want to work the road, you got to work the jail first, and then we'll pull out of the jail and put you on the road. And they didn't make any money, but I needed something.
Yeah.
And I wanted to stay in the field, so I didn't want to be one of those people where I get out of the academy and I go work in some unrelated field, and then like, well, why aren't you working in law enforcement? So I just took whatever I could get at the time, and I think O'Fallon had the college requirement at the time, like the 60 hours or prior military, which I didn't meet. I tested at Lake, and I didn't make the cut. I think I lost it. I lost it to Tom Otten.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to lose a job to anybody, that's an okay guy to lose it to.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's pretty qualified at what he does. But
Is he still there, or did he retire?
No, he was gone before I even got there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was going to affect his retirement. So I think he was going to start losing money because he was.
Yeah, if you hit that age
loggers
mark.
too long.
Yeah.
So I lost that position to him, which, whatever. I didn't know I knew who he was, but I didn't know enough about him at the time. But once I
Former
found
canine
out,
handler.
I was like, oh, okay, I can lose a job to this guy. Yeah. He's more qualified. So I actually got hired on to work patrol in Veneta Park. So that's where I started.
They came in recruited.
Clay Farmer.
He rode a motorcycle.
He's Corporal Farmer. He taught the game class. Yeah.
Big dude.
He thinks he's a lot bigger than he actually is, and I'll tell him that to his face.
But he is kind of a big dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he taught our gang class, and I kind of got a rapport with him, and it's now the co-op, but it was an interesting place.
All those places are now the co-op, man. There's like barely any of them left.
I mean, it was a predominantly black community. At the time, it was like 20% of that community was below poverty level. So I was very much an outsider coming in. It was like me and one other white guy that worked there.
Oh, really?
In the department, and then the community was.
How big was the department? It had to be tiny. Like
it was like 18 or 20 guys.
That's bigger than I thought it would be.
And that's including chief.
How? So the city of Veneta Park. Do you remember how big it was?
It was only like 1,800 residents.
And 18 dudes? That's a
roughly.
That's a high ratio.
Well, they had a lot of rank.
Oh.
There was
Okay.
there was things that didn't even make sense there. I've never heard of a staff sergeant being in police work, but they had a staff sergeant. Whatever. I didn't know. I was just getting my feet wet, and it was a tough place to work at first. There's a lot of internal politics, and then building.
I thought
the
it
trust.
kind of fell because of those internal politics.
It did. They had an issue prior to me getting there that was racially motivated between some of the officers, and I don't really know any of the details of it. It was just kind of a change of, I think their board changed and their mayor changed, and then kind of the changing of the guard. So they brought in their own people, and there's a lot of things that went on prior to me getting there, and people lost jobs. And when I got there, I was just like, I'm just here to learn. I don't know any of this stuff. And then I heard stories as time went on, but it was tough on the street because it was a predominantly black community, and here I am, this white guy trying to build trust, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not talking to you. We don't." And so it took me a little while, but then I got it figured out, and I figured out, just to be fair, like, I'm not here to write you a ticket because you're black or white. I don't care. I'm here to deal with you because a crime has occurred, or you've done something wrong, and now I'm going to enforce it, or I've got to address it to some degree. And so I learned a lot there in a short amount of time. And then a bunch more internal problems.
I kind of had the opposite problem that you had. So I grew up like in a predominantly black area. We were like super poor. So when I came out to O'Fallon, I had an easy time talking to like white trash hillbillies, like the people that we have in our on our trailer parks and stuff, and black people. I had like a super easy time. Like I could get along with them. I could talk to them. Like we spoke the same language. We talked the same slang. Like we understood each other. I had a really hard time, especially when I was young, talking to these like people that lived in like the really affluent parts of our city. Like I'm walking up to the house and I'm looking at them like, oh my God, like this house is worth more than my house and my parents' house and their parents' house combined. I had like the opposite problem.
Yeah, I mean, it got better pretty quickly, and then it was people would rather deal with me in a lot of ways because I guess I didn't have a chip on my shoulder. It wasn't like I'm here to prove something. I'm just here to do and learn.
Yeah.
And then it was.
How long were you there?
I was there. I started in 12, and I was there till late 13. I was there till like November of 13, I think.
Did you leave because the department head was moving in the wrong
so
direction?
There was a new chief that came in, and there were some ethical things that happened. And my current wife, I had met her while I was in the academy. My best friend in the academy had introduced me to her. Okay. His wife is best friends with my wife. So they had introduced us, and we got married in September of 13. We went on honeymoon, and I was gone for 2 weeks, and I came back, and they had done some things, and I was like, oh, well, you can't do that. I don't want any part of this. And so I started looking to get out because some things were going to happen. It was just a matter of time. So I said, I'm not playing along here.
I think that's what I remember from making the department kind of disappear. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they were still working on like the 24-in-1, I think they called it, which is like 24 small munis is one, which became the co-op. But I left right before the co-op started. And I went over to Woodson Terrace. And
coming out of the academy and going to Veneta Park's high crime area, do you remember your first hot call?
Yeah. We were in a lot of assaults. There was actually quite a bit of gang violence over there. Ironically enough, as small as it was, but it bordered unincorporated Hanley Hills, which is patrolled by St. Louis County, and then Wellston, and then the city. So we got a lot of stuff coming out of and going back to the city, and we were on Page. So Page and 170, we were on the Interbelt. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff that came through town, and then U City was the southern border.
Yeah.
So we ran a lot of assaults, a lot of domestics, but I think it was day 2 on field training. It was within the first week. I want to say day 2. We ran a stabbing, and this older gentleman had his son that lived with him, and his son had a bunch of mental health issues, and the dad said he didn't want his kid taking the meds anymore, disagreed with what the doctors had prescribed him, and said, nope, I'm taking him off all his meds. And so he did. Well, the son ended up stabbing the dad to death.
Really?
Yeah, he chased him all over the house and stabbed him like 52 times.
Holy cow.
So we were the first on scene, took the son into custody, and
how was his reaction towards you guys?
Blank. Like I don't think he really knew what he was doing, where he was at. He was so out of his mind.
Really?
Yeah, just in a weird mental state. And I don't know what his diagnosis was. I didn't work the case. I was a 2-day cop. Like, I'm just here to put crime scene tape up or stand here and direct traffic. Like, I'm not working any of this. But they stuck me in the ambulance with Dad when the ambulance got there at first. And Dad, we knew the son had done it, but Dad gave a dying declaration in the ambulance.
Really?
His son had stabbed him to death. And then he wished he'd never taken him off meds. No. So that was kind of a weird, at the time,
nice entry.
I was like, well, you took him off the meds. So it didn't really add up at the time. It didn't really make sense to me at the time, but yeah, I mean, there was blood everywhere. It was a pretty graphic scene. But that was kind of my, here you go.
Welcome to law enforcement.
Yeah. And there was a lot of weird things over there. I mean, at the time, we would run 2 guys, maybe 1, on midnights. And it was kind of like, if you're by yourself, don't do any police work.
Oh, really?
Okay, well, what do you want me to do when a call comes out? And so a lot of times Overland would come over and assist. And I had a couple of instances where I had to call Overland. You know, I have somebody at gunpoint or whatever, and I'm like, I need a car. Send me another unit. I don't care where it's from.
Yeah, that's something I wish we did a little bit better out in this county. It's like actually work together.
It's gotten better.
Yeah, the task force thing has helped a little bit, but
and I'm
everybody's kind of on their own little island.
I'm guilty. I lurk pretty much since I scan religiously. I lurk into O'Fallon and into Wentzville a little bit, and Wentzville's a little bit harder just because of the interstate there.
Yeah.
But O'Fallon's right next door, so I lurk into there. When you guys get something up on 70 and Bryan or whatever, I'm kind of hanging around the corner. But yeah, I think overall we've gotten better just since I've been in the county.
Yeah, I think it has gotten better, but North County just always worked together so well, and it was out of like necessity. Like they had to work together
because there's 2 or 3 guys working a shift, and you have a shooting or something drastic go on. You get 6 or 8 cops from 3 or 4 different departments, and everybody just jumps in.
Yeah,
that's how it went. That was the norm.
Yeah.
We go to somebody else's town and they come to ours, and we just back and forth. It was all we did.
So you're only at Veneta for like a year and a half?
And some change. I came over I left there and went to Woodson. It was like October, November of 13.
Who was the chief?
Bob Dolan. He'd been the chief for a long time.
How quickly did it switch over to Halstead?
Oh, it took a little while. So it was Dowling, and then Dowling passed while he was the chief. He had some health issues, and he got pretty sick. And then he had passed, and then Chief Mayberry took over.
Mayberry, okay.
Yeah, he had been there for, I think, his entire career. Maybe one other department just for a short time before that, and then he took over. And he was there the majority of the time I was there. I was there from 13 to 16, and then I think he was even there a couple of years after that, and then Halstead took over after that when Mayberry retired.
Okay. So you never actually worked for Halstead?
Halstead was lieutenant when I was there, and then he got promoted to captain under Mayberry. So I worked for him, but but Mayberry was the chief when I was there.
I just worked with Ryan forever.
Yeah, his dad was great. I got along great with him, still do. He was very, very good to me. He was that cop's cop. Like, he didn't care that he wore a white shirt.
I've heard that, yeah.
Didn't care that he wore a white shirt. He would go out on traffic stops. Wasn't afraid to get in the scuffle if he needed to. He didn't care. He was still a policeman.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Administrations need that.
It's obviously the bigger the department, the less they get involved with the road side of things, but out of necessity. But
how big was Woodson?
It was like 20 guys, 18 to 20 guys. It fluctuated a little bit with vacancies. And
you've only worked at relatively small departments. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, I actually, I've applied at bigger agencies, but I don't know that I'd have been happy. Like, I enjoy the smaller.
What happens at big departments, though, is you just get separated into kind of smaller, especially with 12-hour shifts. Mm-hmm. You just get separated into smaller departments. Mm-hmm. So, like, you have half the guys working one time, half the guys working the other time, and, like, that's your 30-man department, 40-man department, you know?
Yeah, it's and you unfortunately become a number, too.
Yeah.
My chief.
Under certain regimes, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for a chief or commander to know everybody and know their wives' names in a 120-man department.
That's what makes Derek Myers so special.
I don't disagree, but it's hard for most commanders in a big agency to know their people that well.
Yeah.
My chief could walk down the hall and tell you a lot of things about a lot of his officers, which is nice.
I've only heard guys say good things about him.
Yeah, I can't tell you how good he's been to me and my family, and even our guys from the accident. Like, he's been phenomenal. Overall, I mean, there's always things that people could critique on any commander.
That's everybody.
But overall, like, he goes and fights for us. He gets us what we need. I mean, we're a 40-man department, including him, and we have everybody. We're more advanced than some of the other agencies in the county that are much bigger and have much bigger budgets.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're the first ones to have equipment in the county because we're progressive.
Yeah.
So it's huge for that. There's a lot to be said about that.
What's up, guys? Thanks for hanging in there to the end of the episode. If you can't tell, there's more from Pat, and here's a sneak peek from next week's episode.
And so it was to the floor down Woodson Road, and car crashed at Woodson and Natural Bridge and went up in flames. So I pulled up. I was, second or third on scene, and grabbed a fire extinguisher. And we were just trying to maintain the fire until fire could get there. We knew we weren't going to be able to put it out. And we had one girl had gotten out on her own. I don't recall her having any injuries. There was a passerby that had stopped to pick her up. It was cold. It was February. And stopped, put her in their car. And then there was a guy in the front seat and a girl in the back seat that was just screaming. It had ripped the whole front end of the car off. He had basically tried to make a right turn where the road ended. He hit the embankment, went airborne, hit a lamppost, and ripped the whole front end of the car off. And it was a fireball. It was an old was like a 2000s Cadillac V8 front wheel drive. It was a big heavy car, 2-door car, and so it threw the driver into the passenger seat. So when I walked up to the driver's side window, his legs were across the center console, but his back was up against the passenger door. So he was actually facing me, but he was in the passenger seat, and he was out. I don't know if he was dead or just unconscious from the impact or what. And then the woman in the back seat. And I looked at him, and I called him by his brother's name. I had dealt with his brother like 2 weeks prior. We dealt with both of them quite a bit. And I called him by the wrong name, and then I realized who it was. And like a week prior, this subject and I had got into a knockdown, drag-out fight in his mom's living room, and every piece of furniture was broken in his mom's living room from this fight. So he had pending resisting and assault on LEO charges, and he had been out of prison for a short period of time, and big drug addict. Like, just he had all the things.
Yeah.
So at that point, we weren't trying to arrest him. It was a rescue at that point. And so he started kind of moaning. He had that weird moan. It wasn't like that death gurgle. It was just that, like, he was coming to.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Hey, man, wake up. We got to get you out of the car." The doors were pinned shut. We couldn't get anything out. The window was broken, but I couldn't get the doors open. And he woke up, and it was that weird, like, 1,000-yard stare. And I was standing in the opening of the driver's door, and he didn't say anything. He looked right at me, and he pulled up a gun.